Hi, Michelle. It's great to be here with you. I'm here with Michelle O'Gorman, and I really wanted to speak to you for some time now because I understand that you're a specialist in eating disorders and body image, which is such a critical part of our lives. And yeah, I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about how you work with all kinds of situations and how you really support that person to move through perhaps a very difficult times in their life to and come out the other end. So I'm all ears. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
So yeah, again, my name, thanks for having me on. My name is Michelle Gorman. So I'm based in Wexfordtown and I'm a specialist in eating disorders and body image. So I suppose I do CBTE, so it's cognitive behavior therapy for eating disorders. I also applied the MALSI approach for, say, anorexic nervosa. I have my own personal experience and I trained under the National Centre of Eating Disorders in the UK. I've been in practice probably, I've over like 16 years experience, but I've been in practice full time for 4 years on the 4th of July. And I suppose through my own personal experience of eating disorders, I would have been anorexia for probably about 7 years. And then coming out of that, I turned into a binge eater because I didn't understand how to nourish myself properly. And obviously I had a lot of negative body image with all of that as well. So it took me a good few, probably 7 years when I came out when I was 21. I realized I had an issue when I was 21, and then it took me a good 7 years to find the balance with food, nutrition, and heal my relationship with my own food and body. And so I suppose I work with, at the moment I work with, teenagers probably from 14 like up to, like, I think the eldest client I had was 70 years of age. Because it just has a big impact. And so I work with anorexia nervosa, bulimia, and binge eating disorder distress. But I have it on my website. I'm a specialist in eating disorders, but actually we call it an eating distress because usually what's happening, there's something inside of them that's distressing them, and they're using food to help them cope.
That's
So
exactly right.
Anita
Yeah.
Johnson, yeah, Anita Johnson has a great she has the book Eating in the Light of the Moon by Anita Johnson, but she has a great analogy that a client is going down a raging river and that river is life, and they're holding onto a log and that log is keeping it afloat. It's something they know, and it's safety, and actually represents the eating disorder. So therapy is about learning to let go of the log and tread water. Every now and again, they'll go back to the eating disorder, which represents the log. But through recovery, they start to tread water and swim to the shore. So usually when someone, when someone's going through an eating disorder, everyone's looking at the body, what's wrong? Like, you need to eat, you need to do this, but you need to look at what are the core beliefs underneath, which is anxiety, depression, low mood, trauma, bullying. So you treat the whole person as a holistic, not just the food. Obviously, nutrition rehabilitation has to happen. And then over time, you're working on their core beliefs, their lifestyle, their stresses, their body image. And I suppose, yeah, so that's how I work. I suppose I hope that has been helpful.
Oh no, I love the imagery that you're using there, Michelle, and and thank you so much for letting us know that that's part of your story as well, because that's such honesty, but also that's such reality for everybody to know that you've actually gone through this massive process, and you know the flags along the way, and as you say, you were holding to that log in the river as well, so you really know how that feels like in your body, which I think is the only training for this kind of work, isn't it? The best training for this kind of
Yeah,
work. So
experience.
yeah, you're feeling it from the inside out, which is so core. And I loved what you were saying about the essence of these challenges is that a deep emotional patterning and that area of self-belief and so forth. It's so it's critical. It's everything. Whereas, of course, we're looking at the food, we're looking at the body. Whereas there's a human being with a nervous system
Yeah.
with all sorts of feelings of not being safe, which is what you identified there with that lovely image of the river holding onto the log and that fast moving river as well. And it can feel very, very fast for people when they are in trauma and distress, can't they? It's
Yeah, and it's like it is a level of trauma, and that person is trying to find a way to deal with that trauma. And, you know, it can be the big traumas in life, or it can be, you know, relationship issues, friendship issues, and they're just trying to find, and really it's helping the client to find some new coping mechanisms to deal with life or to overcome the trauma. And you know, how to articulate their feelings and their emotions and be able to express, because a lot of what people do with eating distresses is they suppress their feelings with the food or numb everything out, and then teaching the client or supporting the client to start to express their feelings, know that they're important, that their feelings are important, no matter what's going on in the world, so that they are not turning to ED behaviors. And obviously then creating a support network around them. I am part of that, but there's other, you know, that they have family members, dietitians, doctors, so they have a team around them that supports them through the time. You know, and you can fully recover. I have great testimonials on my website, but you know, like that fully recover is possible. And
Yes.
it starts off with learning how to nourish your body properly, you know, on a daily basis. And what do you, as well as helping the client to recognize what are their needs, you know, because a lot of clients that I work with, they take care of everyone else, they're doing everything else, it's for everyone else, and they're turned to ED behaviors to help them cope with that. But it's like, what are their daily needs on a basis, and how can they support to get their needs met and to know that they're important?
Yes, no, I'm totally with you on that. And perhaps I'll just say a little bit about myself, because in a way, I'd see myself as one of those supports for a family in distress, for a person in distress. And even though I'm not a specialist in eating disorders, I'm a specialist in the nervous system, which for me is at the core of a lot of upset and distress, as we've been just beginning to sort of tease out. So I'd often find myself working with the mum and the young person who may be experiencing the difficulty as well. And yeah, what I like to do as well, Michelle, which we were sort of chatting about earlier, is really go back, if it feels relevant to the family, to the very beginnings of a person's life, the very beginnings of that child's life, because as we know biologically, but it's quite a big thing for us to sort of take on board, it was at 4 weeks of age in utero that we started to mix and blend with our own mother's nutrients. We were actually receiving nutrients from her, obviously through the umbilical cord, from 4 weeks of age. And like it or lump it, you know, she may or may not have had a lot of support. She might have been in quite a stressful environment for various reasons. And maybe she was working too hard. Maybe she had loads of other kids, or all kinds of circumstances for no fault of her own, that we might have received all that unfiltered, which will impact us, I believe, in areas of our self-belief and even our idea about what's safe nutritionally. So sometimes it's necessary, and you know, I know you've worked with all kinds of people, but you know, I think that sometimes it's necessary to go all that far back to understand, why do we restrict, why do we limit, or why do we overdo it sometimes? Because maybe there were times when there really wasn't enough for us, and we had to really take a lot at one particular time. And yeah, so sometimes going that far back really brings a whole different dimension, and it's done very naturally, very simply. I do work with the body physically with people, and when they're present here with me, I do also work online, and I see myself, if you like, as settling some of that crazy water that you spoke around the log, you know, settling the river a little bit. And I guess my gift is to help to slow things down when the river's going really fast and people are feeling very overwhelmed, and they maybe have to have strategies in place to help when things are going too fast. So I really, you know, work to help to really slow things down and in a way bring breath into the whole occasion as well, and you know, often give people things that they can do physically to help them slow down and to help them you know, have compassion for themselves in those really tricky moments when they're behaving in ways that they're really trying to you know, unpick and work with. Yeah. So how does that sound?
Oh, that sounds amazing. And I know you do cranial sacral reflexology, and I had sessions like that when I went through my own recovery, and I found them very, very beneficial. And
Mm.
obviously, with someone in an eating disorder, they're in fight, flight, and freeze. And so, doing work on the nervous system, like is massive in their healing journey. So I totally like everything that you bring is just amazing on a holistic
Yeah.
level. Yeah.
But it is quite interesting, Michelle, as well, because now we're in the world of Zoom, and people might say, how can you work with people on Zoom? But oddly enough, when people have body issues, I find there's a certain safety about working on Zoom as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, whether they're in person here with me on maybe resting on the table, I might have had people that really don't want too much touch for various reasons. And we work with that as well, because maybe the first touches that they had were difficult, or they might have had some disturbing touch of various kinds. So it's an interesting thing that being on Zoom can allow a different layer of connection that doesn't necessarily have to mean touch. So it's even having any kind of an eye contact is quite a big deal for a lot of people. So, you know, there's all of those layers there as well. You know.
And can you talk me through the process of when you're working with a client? Like how does that start out with them, and how do you work with them? I know you touch base, but is it so many sessions and things like that? What would you recommend?
Yeah, it really depends where people want to go and whether it's the parent. Often I'm working with the parent who could be seeing somebody like your. So, for example, if a young person was seeing somebody like yourself, I would often be in the situation of working with the mum who may have all kinds of feelings and obviously feeling they're in a life and death situation or a desperate situation in relation to their daughter or son, and they want to be with somebody to help settle them. So I'd often work in that capacity with people. And sometimes it involves body work, or sometimes it involves being with them either in person or online, and working very kind of gently and consciously for them to sort of really notice, yeah, when I see my person, you know, behaving in a certain way, they might be able to identify that they feel really triggered and they feel the fear or they feel the anger, they feel the frustration, and they might be able to show me exactly where they notice that in their body. And oftentimes, which I'm sure you'll be familiar with, Michelle, that'll link back to something tricky in their early life that had absolutely nothing to do with the dynamics with their current child.
Yeah.
And it's to do with their grief, their anxiety about some big issue. And it's just incredible. They say, oh my goodness, that I'm dumping all those feelings of needing
Yeah.
to control the universe on my child now, which
Yeah.
isn't helping their healing.
No, yeah. And they think it is, but deep down it's, you know, that child has their own needs, their own wants. And I see that, I suppose, sometimes with the relationship with the food and the mom, you should eat this way, this is how it should be. But that child or that, you know, adult has their own wants, their own needs, their own satisfactions when it comes around food. And they're trying to find that, but then all of this is projected on by
Yeah.
parent or society or diet culture. And it's to support that client, which you're doing as well with your clients, is to take back their power and go, what are my needs? What are my satisfactions? How do I want to live my life and my relationship with my food and my body? And we are like, unfortunately, you know, we live in a culture where it's all fast, fast, fast.
Yes.
Marketing is massive and all these subliminal messages are thrown out all the time. And you're trying to support that client to get back to their center and just their basic needs and to help them to find that wholeness, which is obviously
Yeah.
what you're doing as well with the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. And I just like that word you said, satisfaction, because, you know, that for me links with something you may be speaking to about the satisfaction cycle. And it's that idea that as infants, we reach for something, we grab something, you know, be it a toy or something, and then we bring it straight to our mouth, you know, and then, for example, a delicious mango, and then it's dribbling all over our face, and it's absolutely the most delicious thing. And then it's natural for an infant to then fall into a state of rest. Whereas some of us can get caught on this cycle of, I've got to look at my phone, I've got to look at the next thing, I've got to eat this thing, I've got to do that thing, I've got to, but we forget about that cycle, or we don't have it, that feeling in our body of sufficient safety so that we can fall into a rest state. We don't allow ourselves to rest. We've got to be vigilant and onto the next thing and onto the next thing, which is all a nervous system pattern. So, you know, when I help people just to see, okay, where are we caught? Are we, you know, fast eating? Are we fast rushing towards shopping all the time? Or, looking at our phone or getting that dopamine from some other source all the time? Or, how can we move towards those rest states or find little snippets of rest? Because that for me is part of that satisfaction cycle. That's that deep satisfaction that perhaps all of us humans are craving, that connection, that capacity just to love ourselves and just to pause. That's what we're all really
Yeah.
desperate for, isn't it?
Yeah, just finding, I suppose, exactly, and finding some peace. And what does that
Yeah.
look like? Yeah.
Yes.
And I know I mentioned mums, and I suppose if anyone is watching, I'm not blaming mums for eating disorders or eating distress, but sometimes it's that conditioning of society has been, from generation to generation, has been brought down, and then the child takes it, or they learn it from in schools or coaches or diet industry or culture, and they get all these mixed messages, and then they're not listening to their body. And the whole thing about the therapy process is bringing them back to their basic needs. And and a lot of, parents as well find healing with their relationship with in food as well, when they bring, I suppose, a child to me, and they're like, oh yeah, like I've been doing this. And so it's not just the healing of the child or the young adult, but so much more happens within the family unit.
Absolutely, yes. And I also work as an aware parenting instructor. I forgot about this piece, but I'm sure you kind of would echo my thoughts around it. It's like this idea that as a child, often we've been given something instead of allowing our feelings to be heard. So if there's a child that's upset, oh, you must be hungry. you know
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
let's just it's a bit like if we were having this chat and then we got into some territory that was a little bit upsetting, and you were saying to me, oh, come on, Sarah, have a banana. And I was saying, what? Why is she talking to me about bananas? Oh, do you see the birdie over there? Instead of kind of staying with what's going on for each other, we're kind of
Yeah.
trying to distract all the time. And that's, in a way, as you say, part of the culture. Nobody's fault, but we can learn to do that differently as well. That I can see that you're upset about something, and I can see that you're asking me for lots and lots of jelly babies, but actually, we know that actually you've got a feeling here, and it's okay to have that feeling as well.
Yes. It's okay to express it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
find a way to make that possible, to have expression in the family. So
Yes.
there's so many beautiful layers to all of this. And
Yeah. And sometimes, like, our family, it wasn't taught, and it was just, it was, again, a safety mechanism. We don't do this in the household. We don't talk about our feelings. But then, a lot of clients who come into me obviously are very I can't even say the word, sensitive creatures.
yes.
And then if they're told to shut down, or to see other people shutting down in front of them, they learn that as a condition, and that's how they learn to cope. And just expression is so important in recovery.
Mm. Yeah, and if it's not kind of, we're not going to dampen it down in this way, we might dampen it down in another way. So I
Yeah.
think in a way, that's probably what healing is about, isn't it, Michelle? That we all need to reflect, like, how do we dampen down our feelings, and how can we allow a space for our feelings, even if it's on a walk where we have a little bit of a cry or a stomp or
Yeah.
whatever we need to do to release a little bit of something in a safe way. And then obviously anyone that's in our midst, whether it's a young person, they'll get to see us owning our feelings a bit more as well, which is obviously very important for anyone's recovery.
Yeah, it's massive. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, you do amazing work.
I'd say you do too. So that's why I'm enjoying our conversation, Michelle. So I guess at the bottom of this, we'll put down both of our connections, and it's possible that we'll be exploring perhaps in the future how we might be able to partner together with some clients, because with your expertise and my different ways of working, it could well be a cross referral situation, which would be very positive, I think, on
Yeah,
all.
of course. Yeah, it would be brilliant. So thank you very much for inviting me today. I really appreciate it. It was amazing. Thank you very much.
It's great to talk to you.